Said they missed me this Thanksgiving, but forgot I can still read their posts. I smirked and they get down on their knees to beg me come back. Grandma, we miss you, and your cooking. The first thing I heard that morning was not the sound of birdsong, nor the nurse's soft steps outside my door. It was the click of the landline beside my bed, followed by voices they never meant for me to hear. Tell her we miss her, so she'll crawl back to cook that turkey again. A pause, then her voice. My daughter-in-law. Always too loud when pretending to be kind, always too quiet when being cruel. Last time she slipped, we almost got lucky. Just need one more fall. Then laughter. His laugh. My son. She's too dumb to read this stuff anyway. Probably thinks a hashtag is a church group. The line stayed open. I stared at the ceiling, white and tiled, the corners darkened by age. The pain in my leg was dull this morning, numb almost, but the ache in my chest spread like slow poison. I did not cry. Crying was for women who still had something to lose. Instead, I reached, slowly, deliberately, for the phone in my lap. The one they had not taken. The one the nurse let me keep, even though it barely held a charge. She called it my window to the world. Funny, all it ever showed me was who had stopped looking in. I pulled up my messages. Most were years old. Automated texts from the pharmacy. Holiday greetings from old church friends now gone. A photo of a birthday cake from 3 years ago sent with no words. I scrolled past it all until I saw it. Ethan, the boy with the glasses. 10 years ago that name meant nothing to my son, but to me, he was a summer I never forgot. 8 years old, all bones and bruises and too many questions. His mother had dropped him off for a week and left him for a season. Said she needed space. Said I looked like a nice old lady. I fed him oatmeal with honey and cinnamon, showed him how to tie his shoes with 1 loop instead of 2, taught him how to water the garden without drowning the tomatoes. At night, he curled into the guest bed like a frightened animal and whispered stories into the dark. I never repeated a word of them. Not to her, not to anyone. One day, over a peanut butter sandwich, he looked up at me and said, "You're the first person who waits when I talk." That was the same day my daughter-in-law told me I needed to stop spoiling other people's kids. I tapped his name. The screen stayed still. No new number, no updates, just a photo, his front tooth missing, glasses too big for his face, a smear of chocolate near his mouth. He had hugged me so hard the day they came to pick him up that I felt my ribs shift. I told him I would always remember him. And I did. I heard the hallway shift outside. Debbie, the morning nurse, humming something from the radio. She would be in soon with the pills, the soft scrambled eggs, the reminder to breathe through the pain. But for now, I lay in silence. California mornings in a nursing home feel colder than they should. Even in July, the chill settles into your bones and reminds you that you are no longer needed, not the way you once were. My fall was an accident, yes, but it was also an exit, a quiet removal, one less mouth, one less opinion, one less name on the mailbox. They had not said it outright, of course. They brought flowers to the hospital. They kissed my forehead. But when the doctor mentioned rehab, they latched onto the word like salvation. Yes, yes, of course she needs time. She needs care. They did not come to the rehab. They did not call, except to ask where I kept the turkey baster. And now, this morning's phone call, the red light on the landline blinking, the voices fading into static. Tell her we miss her, so she'll crawl back to cook that turkey again. They had said crawl, not come, not return. Crawl. As if I were a creature on hands and knees, desperate for their approval, aching to be of use. As if the love I had poured into 1,000 meals could be boiled down to gravy and forgotten the moment my hands trembled. I looked at my leg, wrapped in plaster and gauze, a small black marker dot near the knee where the surgeon had signed his initials, as if even now I belonged to someone else's decision. I thought of Thanksgiving, of all the years I had basted, carved, stirred, plated, of how they smiled with full mouths and took seconds without thanks, how my daughter-in-law would always bring her own casserole and place it at the center of the table like a declaration of war, of how my son would nod and joke, Mom still got it, but never once offered to help clean. They thought I did it because I had nothing better to do, but they never understood. I did it because I loved them. Because feeding someone was my way of holding them when they would not be held. Because I thought one more meal might make them see me. It never did. I turned back to Ethan's photo. You're the first person who waits when I talk. I had waited 10 years. Waited through birthdays they forgot, holidays they rushed through, Mother's Days filled with carnations and silence. And now they were waiting for me to come home, to crawl, to cook. I smiled, a small, strange smile, not because I was amused, but because I knew something they had forgotten. I may be old, but I remember. I remember the passwords, the deeds, the bank accounts, the names. I remember where the documents are. I remember every recipe they took credit for. Every night they left me to eat alone. Every gift returned unopened. Every time they whispered in the other room, thinking I was too slow, too deaf, too dumb. And now I remembered Ethan, the boy with the glasses, the one person who had looked at me and seen more than chores and casseroles. I pressed compose and began to type, my fingers stiff but steady. Hi, Ethan. You probably do not remember me, but I never forgot you. My name is Ruth. You stayed with me one summer when you were little. I still remember your stories. I hope life has been kind to you. I am writing because I think I need someone who once saw me clearly, someone who knows I am not just a cook or a couch or a cast, someone who remembers. I do not need anything. I just needed to say that I am still here, still waiting when people talk. I hit send. The screen blinked. Message delivered. Outside, the hallway stirred again. Laughter. Keys jangling. Someone asking if the cranberry juice had been ordered. The world kept spinning, and I let it. I did not move. Not yet. Because I had just done something powerful. I had chosen who to reach for. Not out of desperation, but clarity. Let them wait for my stuffing, my gravy, my pies. Let them carve their own bird this year. Let them miss me. Let them wonder. Because I would not be crawling back. Not now. Not ever. The screen flickered with their smiling faces, pixelated by a shaky connection, but still sickeningly sweet. Hi, Mom, Mike said, tone syrupy. We were just thinking, it would be really great to have you home for Thanksgiving this year. Linda leaned into the frame, her blonde curls sprayed stiff. We miss you, and the kids keep asking about Grandma's stuffing. I tilted my head slightly, pretending to adjust the volume. The nurse had set the tablet upright for me earlier that morning. I kept my expression soft, my voice warmer than I felt. That's sweet of you both. I'll think about it. Oh, think quick, Linda chirped. Time's flying. Love you, Mom. Then came the part they never meant me to hear. They thought they had ended the call. The screen went dark, but the speaker stayed on. A small red icon in the corner, muted but not disconnected. I listened. First came the clatter of a mug being set down, the scrape of a chair. Then Mike's voice, sharper now. She's almost gone last time. Little extra oil and boom, inheritance unlocked. My breath stopped in my chest. No walker this year, Linda added, laughing under her breath. Let the stairs finish the job. The silence that followed was more horrifying than the words themselves. It was the silence of agreement, of planning, of cruelty practiced so long it no longer felt wicked to them. Mike snorted. Old hag still thinks we love her. My fingers trembled slightly where they rested on the blanket, but I made no sound. No gasp, no click, nothing to alert them. Instead, I closed my eyes and let my head drift sideways, as if sleep had claimed me again. A beat passed, then another. Then I heard it, Mike's voice again, but this time uncertain. Mom, are you still there? I opened my eyes just enough to see the screen light up. They had realized the line was still open. Their faces, pale and blinking, watching for a reaction. I smiled softly, just enough to crease the corners of my mouth. Sorry, I said gently. I dozed off. Relief flooded the screen. Mike chuckled awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck. Linda forced a grin so wide I thought her face might crack. Well, she said, come home soon. We miss you. And your turkey stuffing. The screen went black for good. I stared at the quiet tablet. They had nearly killed me once. Accident, they called it. I slipped on the stairs while holding a pot of oil. My legs snapped like a matchstick. Linda's only concern had been the ruined carpet. Now I knew it had never been an accident. They wanted the house, the money. The accounts they thought I had forgotten. They had waited long enough, smiled long enough, cooked just enough holiday meals to keep me trusting. But this year something changed. This year they forgot I could hear. This year they made one final mistake. I reached for my phone. The nurse had charged it overnight, bless her. She said she liked that I still kept in touch, not knowing that most of my conversations were with memories. Except for one. I scrolled until I found his name, Ethan. I had not heard his voice in over a decade, but I still remembered the boy who once hid behind my apron when the other kids mocked his glasses, who cried in the laundry room because he spilled juice on the carpet and thought no one would love him again, who flinched every time someone raised their voice. He was older now, a man probably, but some bonds do not age. I typed slowly, carefully. Remember when you said you owed me one for hiding you from your bullies? I stared at the message, hovering over the send button. Then I pressed it. Seconds passed. Then my screen lit up. Yes, ma'am. You saved my life. Now I'll save yours. I stared at those words until they blurred. Outside my window, the sun was rising. It spilled through the blinds in broken gold lines across the floor. Somewhere down the hall, a radio played faint jazz, and the scent of toast drifted into my room. I closed my eyes, not in sleep, but in something sharper, resolve. They thought they were playing the long game. They thought they had worn me down. But I am not a fool, and I am not alone. 3 days later, they came. Mike wore his softest expression, his dutiful son look. He brought me carnations, the cheap kind from the gas station. Linda followed behind, wrapped in a coat she did not take off, though the room was warm. Her lipstick was too red, her smile too bright. "Mom," Mike said, bending to kiss my cheek. "You look great, stronger already." Linda set the flowers down and pulled up a chair. "Thanksgiving isn't the same without your sweet potato casserole. The girls keep asking when Grandma's coming home." I smiled. It was the kind of smile that does not reach the eyes, but makes people lean in, thinking they have been forgiven. "Oh, sweetheart," I said softly. "How kind of you to come all this way." Mike reached for my hand. I let him. "You'll sit at the head of the table this year," he promised, squeezing lightly. "We've already moved the big chair. It's all ready for you." He had never let me sit at the head before, not once, not when I cooked everything, not even when his father passed and I was the only one left to carry the stories. But now I was to be placed front and center, like a queen whose crown had begun to tarnish. "We'll pick you up early Thursday morning," Linda said. "You can rest before dinner." "How thoughtful," I replied. They were so sure they had won. They had no idea the game had changed. Because Ethan and I had already begun. The microphone was tucked neatly into my cardigan, sewn just beneath the collar by Debbie, who thought she was helping me repair a loose thread. She did not ask questions. Just smiled, stitched, and told me I looked dignified. The camera was Ethan's idea. Tiny, no bigger than a button, hidden in the cushion of the living room armchair, the one I always sat in during holidays. He mailed it directly to the nursing home, labeled it mobility cushion. The staff never opened it. They assumed it was something Medicare had approved. Police had the file already. Ethan made sure of that. He had not just become a man. He had become something powerful, a cybersecurity expert in Silicon Valley. He specialized in tracking threats, creating trails, building evidence that did not disappear when people deleted their sins. "It's a different kind of war now," he had told me on the phone, his voice deeper but still gentle. "You do not have to fight loud, you just have to press record." And so, we prepared. Mike and Linda chatted cheerfully about seating arrangements and cranberry sauce. I listened, nodding in all the right places, my mind 1,000 miles ahead. I had printed a copy of the message, the one from their accidental call. Ethan had cleaned the audio, enhanced it, and emailed me the transcript. It sat folded in my purse now, just in case they needed reminding. But not today. Today I would play the part, the tired old mother, grateful, forgetful, harmless. "I'm so glad we'll be together again," I whispered. Linda touched my shoulder. "We love you, Mom." I looked her in the eye. "I know." That was enough for today. They left with smiles and promises, the kind you make to someone you think will not survive the winter. I watched them walk to the car from my window. Mike adjusted his collar. Linda checked her reflection in the mirror. They looked like people attending a funeral for someone still breathing, but they were walking into their own reckoning. Later that evening, I called Ethan. He answered on the first ring. "Somebody came," I said. "Did they say anything suspicious?" "No, they're saving that for Thursday." "Good, that's when we go live." Ethan had already set the system. The microphone on my sweater would connect wirelessly to his device through a tiny transmitter hidden in the heel of my orthopedic shoe. It would begin recording the moment I stepped inside their house. The living room camera would activate when I sat. He had programmed it with facial recognition. It would track the conversation and send live audio clips to the police's secure server. If anything happened, if they so much as raised their voices in threat, it would be logged, time-stamped, and forwarded automatically. The plan was simple. Let them be themselves, let them speak freely, because the cruel never believe the quiet will rise, especially when the quiet is wearing orthopedic shoes and baking pies. "I still cannot believe you do this for a living," I said, half smiling into the phone. "I do it because of you," he replied. "You're the reason I got out of that house. You taught me not to be afraid of truth." I closed my eyes, letting his words settle like warm tea. "Ethan," I whispered, "whatever happens, thank you." "No," he said firmly, "whatever happens, you do not thank me. You survive, you get justice." "And you sit at the head of the table," I chuckled. "Only if there's real butter this year." "You got it." We hung up. I turned to the small mirror on the dresser. My face was lined, my hair thinning. But my eyes? They still held fire. I remembered every insult, every dismissal, every time they called me slow, forgetful, useless. They thought old age was the same as weakness. But wisdom is the long game. And revenge? Revenge is patient. That night, I did not sleep much. I wrote out my recipes by hand, the real ones. The ones Linda always begged for but never got right. I tied them with a ribbon and placed them in my suitcase. Let her think she had won something when she stole it. Let her find out they were missing one ingredient: me. Thanksgiving was coming, and I would be there, just not the way they expected. Thanksgiving morning arrived wrapped in golden lies. The sun shone too brightly for November. The air smelled of cinnamon, cloves, and calculation. Mike's car pulled up at 8:43 a.m.ing sharp, polished to perfection. Linda stepped out first, coat swinging, holding a Tupperware of pre-cut garnishes she would claim as her own. Mike followed with fake warmth and that same practiced smile he used at funerals and mortgage signings. They helped me into the car, gently, lovingly. I thanked them. Inside, Linda had lit every candle in the house, the scent of rosemary and vanilla mixed with the roasting bird. Napkins, folded like swans, china polished, silverware that had not seen daylight since my husband's wake. The table was set for a celebration. But the air? It buzzed like a wire ready to snap. I was placed at the head, as promised. The big chair, the one they used to put in the garage to make room. Children ran past me, unaware of the tension slicing through the room. Linda called for them to wash their hands, her voice sugar-coated. Mike hummed while stirring gravy, peeking over at me every few seconds, as if checking for signs of weakness. They thought I had returned out of love, out of guilt, out of forgetfulness. They thought they had pulled the strings tight enough. Ethan was already in position, parked down the street, watching, recording. The microphone beneath my collar caught every whispered exchange. The tiny lens in the cushion pointed straight at the dining room, where intention simmered hotter than the sweet potatoes. Dinner was served at 3:00 p.m. sharp. The family bowed their heads as Mike performed a short, empty prayer about gratitude and grace. His voice trembled in all the right places. Linda squeezed my hand and mouthed, "Welcome home." Then they carved the turkey and poured the wine. The room buzzed with chatter. My grandchildren passed rolls, made jokes, asked about school. The lies stacked higher than the mashed potatoes. I listened to it all in silence, chewing slowly, letting the warmth of the food melt into steel beneath my ribs. At 3:26 p.m., Mike stood, wine opener in hand. "Mom," he said cheerfully, "how about we toast to your return?" He grinned, the cork twisted. Then, the television clicked on by itself. The screen, dark for hours, lit up in cold, sharp resolution. It played a video. From their own kitchen, their own voices. Alex is Mike. She's worth more dead than alive. Linda. No walker, no rail. Boom. A pause. Mike again. Old hag still thinks we love her. The room froze. Forks hovered mid-air. Glasses trembled in hands. A child whispered, "What's that?" Linda dropped her knife. It clattered like a gunshot. Mike lunged for the remote, but the screen locked. Then came the lights. Blue and red flooded the windows. Outside, squad cars parked across the lawn, their engines low and steady. Doors opened, footsteps echoed. Then the knock, firm, final, undeniable. 3 officers entered without waiting for a response. Behind them, Ethan. No longer the small boy I had hidden from bullies. He stood tall, black coat zipped high, eyes sharp. A woman in uniform stepped forward. Her voice was calm, measured, absolute. "Mike Ransom, Linda Ransom, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse, and financial exploitation of a dependent adult." Mike's mouth opened, but made no sound. Linda dropped her wine. It shattered. The turkey slid off the platter in slow motion, grease staining the tablecloth like blood. My youngest granddaughter began to cry. And me? I took a sip of water, set the glass down, and rose slowly, stronger than they ever imagined. "You said you missed me," I said quietly. All eyes turned. Mike's face flushed purple. Linda stumbled back. "But what you missed," I continued, "was control." I took a breath, and I missed nothing, not even your hashtags. The officers moved forward. Mike shouted something, slurred, unfinished. Linda screamed, pointing at me, at the screen, at Ethan. "This is insane. She's manipulating you. She's senile." But the proof had spoken. The house, the microphones, the video, they were no longer just tools. They were witnesses. Mike was cuffed first. Linda followed, fighting like a cat in water. As they were led away, I looked at Ethan. He gave a slight nod. Justice does not always shout. Sometimes it sits quietly at the head of the table and waits. The police station smelled like old paper and bitter coffee. I sat upright in the interview room, back straight, hands folded. No cane, no nurse, no wheelchair. Ethan offered me an arm when we walked in, but I shook my head gently. I needed them to see. I was not broken, not this time. Across the table, the district attorney adjusted her glasses. She was young, too young to remember a world without cell phones, but her eyes were sharp and unwavering. Beside her, a detective tapped through a file on a government-issued laptop. Ethan sat on my left, still in his dark coat, his hands steady on the table. Next to him was the attorney he had hired, an older woman with the calm confidence of someone who had walked through fire and survived. The DA began. "We've reviewed all submitted materials. The video evidence captured in the Ransom household, the audio feed recorded from Ms. Ransom's sweater, the hidden surveillance device in the cushion, and the full digital archive provided by Mr. Ethan Rowe." She looked at me. "Do you understand the charges being considered, Mrs. Ransom?" I nodded. "I do." The detective turned his screen toward us. "These are the group messages from an encrypted app. We traced the account to Mike Ransom after Mr. Rowe infiltrated the group's data using his firm's forensic tools. The chat names were masked, but the content was plain. ETA on the payout. Still no rail on the stairs. Easier this way. She's getting clumsier. Might not even need a push. Oil trick again? Or just let her wander upstairs? This time we get it on camera, make it look like she refused help. I did not flinch. I had read these already 3 nights ago, alone in my bed at the nursing home, the light from the phone screen the only thing illuminating my hands. Still, seeing them projected on a government screen brought something deeper. Not pain, validation. They weren't hypotheticals. These were steps in a plan. Ethan pulled out another folder and slid it across the table. "Financials," he said quietly. "You'll find 4 separate withdrawals from a senior care life insurance policy, triggered by falsified medical documentation declaring my grandmother deceased." The DA flipped through them, her face hardening with every page. One document in particular was highlighted, a death verification letter from a private insurance administrator, dated 3 months prior. My signature was forged at the bottom. "The policy," the DA said slowly, "was signed to transfer to Mike Ransom upon the death of the insured, Ruth Ransom." She looked up at me. "You are Ruth Ransom." "Yes," I said. and I am still very much alive." The room fell silent. Then came the photographs. The detective laid them out like playing cards. Photos of my staircase, the one I had walked for decades without issue. Until one day there was oil, a gloss of it near the top step, captured in a snapshot Ethan had taken during one of his return visits. He had flown down quietly 2 weeks after my injury and taken dozens of these, unannounced. Another photo showed the handrail, removed, cleanly uninstalled, no screws, no wall anchors, just blank space where my hand used to rest. Then a hospital note, a nurse's report. Patient denied walker use despite doctor's orders. Family insisted she was stubborn and fine without it. I had begged them that day, said the floor was slick, said the pain was too much. Linda had rolled her eyes and said, "Mom, you're milking it." The DA gathered everything into a neat pile. She did not look triumphant. She looked tired. Tired in the way women get when they have seen too many people treat their own blood like burdens. She spoke, low and clear. This was not negligence. This was attempted murder. My breath caught, just for a moment, not because I doubted it, but because someone had finally said it aloud. Mike and Linda Ransom, she continued, knowingly conspired to stage an accident that would result in your death. They stood to gain financially and intended to disguise it as a fall due to age or confusion. She looked directly at me. But you were not confused. I shook my head. Not for a very long time. And you did not fall. No, I said. I was pushed. No one moved. The air in the room grew heavier. Ethan reached for my hand, his grip warm, steady. I looked at him and nodded once. "We'll move forward," the DA said. "We'll press charges on every count we can. They'll try to claim it was a joke, that they were overwhelmed, not malicious. But the documentation, the money trail, the chat records, it paints a clear picture." I smiled faintly. "I used to bake pies for them, you know. Every Sunday." The DA blinked, caught off guard. "I used to believe love could make people good." And then I leaned forward, voice soft but unshakable. "But sometimes justice has to do what love cannot." She nodded. And so we began. The courtroom was colder than I expected, not in temperature, but in atmosphere. Sterile, unforgiving, stripped of pleasantries. The California Superior Court held no space for sentiment, no corners for shame to hide, just hard benches, thick files, and the gavel of justice waiting to fall. I walked in without help, no cane, no wheelchair, just my own strength. Ethan sat behind me, just off to the side of the gallery. His presence, even through glass, calmed something in me. He had flown back in last night after securing the last piece of digital evidence. Now he waited for his turn. Linda sat stiff in her seat, no makeup, wrists cuffed, her hair tied back in something that no longer qualified as a style. Mike sat beside her in a wrinkled suit that used to fit him better. He looked older than I remembered, like guilt had finally settled across his shoulders. The judge entered, the bailiff called the room to order, and so it began. Mike's attorney stood first. "Your Honor," he said, his voice calm but coiled. "My client insists there has been a misunderstanding. The Ransoms never intended harm. Any recordings captured are taken out of context, misinterpreted. Their concern was always their mother's well-being." Mike nodded quickly, rising to speak. "We only wanted Mom's best," he began, eyes trained on the judge, but I stood. The judge allowed it. I looked at my son, this man I had once nursed through chickenpox, whose baby shoes I still kept in a drawer, and I said without trembling, "Your best is another word for greed." The courtroom did not gasp, but it did go silent. Mike sat down slowly, as if my words weighed more than the handcuffs on his wrists. Then the prosecutor rose. "Your Honor," she said, "we would like to enter Exhibit C, video footage obtained from the Ransom's home, authenticated by both a licensed cybersecurity expert and corroborated by physical surveillance logs. And something cyber shifts were recorded, authenticated by both a licensed cybersecurity expert and corroborated by physical surveillance logs." The courtroom screen flickered to life. The first frame was the Thanksgiving table. The next, Mike's voice. "She's worth more dead than alive." Then Linda, "No walker, no rail." Boom. And finally, "Old hag still thinks we love her." I watched Linda press her hands to her ears as her own voice echoed back at her, too loud to ignore. The prosecutor turned. This clip was uploaded anonymously just 48 hours ago. It's since been shared over 4,000 times. Social media has dubbed it, she checked her notes, Turkey and Tragedy 2025. Linda broke. No, she screamed. This isn't fair. That clip, he tricked us. She made us look bad. This wasn't supposed to happen. The judge banged the gavel once, sharp and commanding. Order. The prosecutor clicked her remote. New screen, new witness. Ethan appeared via Zoom, his image crisp, his tone calm. He wore a navy sweater, clean-shaven, eyes steady. I'm Ethan Rowe, he began, founder of Niveus Tech Security, specializing in encrypted communications and digital forensics. I personally decrypted the chat logs submitted under sealed evidence. The language and time-stamped content confirm coordination of intent. Can you explain that? The judge asked. Yes, Your Honor. Multiple messages were exchanged through a disguised messaging app. These included explicit discussions of when and how to remove safety features from Ms. Ransom's home, railings, walking supports, and also mapped out insurance documents with forged entries. These actions were not coincidental. They were part of a structured attempt to disguise a planned fatal accident as elder clumsiness. The courtroom was dead still. I have submitted complete logs, Ethan continued, cross-referenced with financial activity showing insurance withdrawals and internal emails from their provider. The digital fingerprints match Mr. Mike Ransom's device ID and IP address. He looked at the judge. The evidence is clear. Linda buried her face in her hands. Her shoulders heaved with shallow sobs. Mike did not look up again. The prosecutor nodded toward me. Mrs. Ransom, would you like to add anything? I stood again. My son wanted my best, I said. His wife smiled while counting the days I had left. But I never forgot how to count either. I looked at Mike. You thought I stopped paying attention. You thought old meant blind, but I watched. I listened. And I remembered. The judge looked over the documentation for a long moment. Then she spoke. Based on the strength of the evidence, the verified digital logs, and the public safety risk presented, I am issuing the following orders. She glanced to the clerk. Calm. Emergency protective order in favor of Mrs. Ruth Ransom to ensure her complete safety and restriction of any contact by the defendants. My lawyer touched my shoulder gently. 2. Immediate freeze of all Ransom family assets related to the insurance policy in question pending full trial proceedings. Mike's jaw tightened. And 3. Detention without bail for both Mike and Linda Ransom pending trial for conspiracy to commit attempted murder, elder abuse, and financial exploitation. The gavel fell. Ethan closed his laptop. I sat back down and exhaled, not in victory, but in the strange, quiet release that comes when truth is no longer your burden alone. The courtroom was packed. Cameras lined the back wall like sentinels. Journalists scribbled notes between glances at their phones. A national broadcast sign blinked in the corner of the screen above the judge's bench. Live, Ransom v. California. Verdict day. I wore navy. Not black, not gray, navy. A color for women who've already mourned and chosen to rise. Mike and Linda sat at the defense table in state-issued suits. Their faces were pale, pinched. The cameras caught every twitch of their lips, every nervous glance. I did not look at them. Not yet. The judge entered, solemn and steady, and the room stood. Once seated, my attorney rose. She was not dramatic. Her voice was like a scalpel, sharp, direct, and impossible to ignore. Your Honor, she began, on behalf of Mrs. Ruth Ransom, we request full restitution, financial, legal, and personal. She turned slightly to the gallery. My client was not only targeted in an attempted murder plot, but she was humiliated, neglected, emotionally tortured, and stripped of dignity in a home she herself had built. She handed the judge a packet. We are asking for the following. 1. Complete revocation of Mike and Linda Ransom's inheritance rights, permanently. 2. Seizure and return of all assets fraudulently acquired through forged insurance policies and false care claims. 3. Emotional and physical restitution totaling $1,200,000 0 cents to compensate for psychological trauma, forced relocation, and loss of autonomy due to calculated negligence. The judge nodded, expression unreadable. Then came the evidence. Again, the lights dimmed, the screen descended, and the clip played for the world. My living room, the warm glow of Thanksgiving dinner. Mike's voice, casual as breath. She's worth more dead than alive. Linda's cold laugh. No walker, no rail, boom. And finally Mike again. Old hag still thinks we love her. A journalist in the gallery audibly gasped. Linda pressed a tissue to her face, already streaked with mascara. The judge turned to the prosecutor. She stood slowly. The state of California finds this behavior not only criminal, but reprehensible. With full cooperation from cyber forensics and digital analysts, we have verified that the conspiracy was intentional, repeated, and designed to appear as natural elder decline. This is not negligence. This is premeditated betrayal within a family. Then she looked at me. And Mrs. Ransom did not just survive it, she brought the truth forward when no one else could. Ethan sat behind me, calm as ever, his arms folded, his eyes fixed on Mike. The judge turned at last. Her voice was low and powerful, each word like the striking of a bell. Mike and Linda Ransom, this court finds you guilty on all charges: conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse, financial fraud, and attempted exploitation of an at-risk adult. A ripple moved through the gallery. The judge continued. Per Penal Code 368 and applicable elder protection statutes, you are hereby sentenced to a maximum term allowable under law with no option for parole until full restitution is paid and rehabilitation is deemed sincere and measurable. She paused. To the victim, Mrs. Ruth Ransom, this court grants full ownership and reinstatement of all properties and financial accounts affected. Her gavel raised. Full restitution to Mrs. Ransom. Crack! The room exploded in flashes, cameras clicked, reporters leaned over each other to capture the moment. But I was still, calm. I had already wept in silence. Already counted the nights I went unheard. This was not a celebration. It was a release. Mike's knees gave first. He collapsed beside the table, face hidden behind his cuffed hands. Please, he choked out. Please, Mom, please forgive us. Linda broke next. She stumbled forward before the bailiff could restrain her and dropped at my feet, sobbing so hard her words blurred. I was scared. I just wanted, please forgive me, Mom. The cameras zoomed in, desperate to capture drama, but I had no tears left. Only the quiet clarity of truth finally spoken aloud. I looked down at her, this woman who called me extra weight, who scrubbed counters behind me, who smiled only when there was something to gain. And I smiled, just once. You missed control, I said softly, not me. The guards pulled them back. The doors opened. I stepped out into sunlight, free, whole, and seen. Ethan came for me one crisp December morning. No cameras, no fanfare, just him, waiting by the car with a thermos of my favorite tea and a blanket folded over the passenger seat. I found a place, he said, lifting my bag with ease. It has wide doorways, no stairs, and a fireplace you'll love. I smiled, slipping into the seat without a word. As we drove north toward Palo Alto, the hills softened into memory, and the sky stretched wide with promise. The house was small, sunlit, and wrapped in jasmine vines. Inside, warm wood floors, a kitchen that smelled like fresh basil, and a reading nook by the window that became my new chapel. He carried every box himself. His wife Delia greeted me at the door with open arms and eyes that did not pity, only welcomed. Ethan said you love lemon tea, she said, so I stocked up. They gave me the back bedroom with its own garden view. The first night I cried, not from grief, but from the unfamiliarity of kindness without a catch. Within a year they had a child, a daughter, tiny, fierce, with her father's stubborn chin and her mother's laugh. They named her Clara. Would you be her godmother? Ethan asked, holding the child out to me like a secret. I'm already her grandmother, I said, holding her close. Every Sunday, I read Clara's stories on the porch. She'd tug my braid, babble nonsense, and fall asleep against my chest as the sun slid behind the hills. For the first time in decades, I was not needed. I was wanted. That was all the difference. Meanwhile, Mike and Linda sat behind cold steel bars. Their faces, once polished and photogenic, now bloated with resentment and shame, appeared on every evening news special as the modern cautionary tale. The Thanksgiving betrayal, the price of greed, justice for Grandma. The headlines ran for weeks. Talk shows debated their sentence. Psychologists dissected their entitlement, and strangers, hundreds of them, sent letters to me at Ethan's address. Some offered apologies for what their own parents had endured. Others simply said, "Thank you for not staying silent." I read each one, and I answered many, but one letter arrived that stopped my hands mid-tea pour. It was from my daughter, the one who had moved to Oregon years ago and never looked back. The one who only called for birthdays if she remembered. The one who had married a man who called me "that old bird" and said I was too opinionated to visit. Her handwriting hadn't changed. The words were shaky. "Mom, I'm sorry. I saw the news. I didn't know how bad it had gotten. I didn't know they were hurting you. I should have done more. Should have called more, should have believed in more than just silence." She signed it, "Love, Ellie." No return address. Just an apology years late. I folded it once, slid it into the drawer with the others. Some absences can be forgiven, but not all deserve return. On a soft spring morning, I visited the prison release center, not because I wanted to see them, but because I needed to close the door myself. I walked alone. The man at the desk asked if I had an appointment. I said no. "I just need to leave something," I said, holding out an envelope. He nodded, pointed to a silver mailbox on the wall. I walked to it. I slipped the paper in, no fanfare, no signature, just these words, scrawled in my slow, precise hand. "You chose control, I chose memory. Now I have peace and a new family who truly listens." And I walked away. I never looked back. The final scene was never in a courtroom. It was not on the news. It was on the front porch of Ethan's home. I sat in a rocking chair, quilt over my knees, as Clara toddled across the wooden planks, chasing bubbles her father blew from the step. Delia watered the basil. The wind smelled like lemon and rosemary, and the light, golden, soft, brushed against my silver hair like a benediction. Not everyone gets a second chapter, but I did. Not because I demanded it, but because I waited. I remembered, and I listened, until someone finally listened back. Somewhere behind me, the kettle whistled. Somewhere ahead, the child laughed, and I closed my eyes, not in rest, but in peace. If this story touched something deep in you, if you've ever been dismissed, forgotten, or underestimated, know this: you are not alone, and you are not powerless. Here at Grandma True Stories, we share the truths too many were told to bury, not for pity, but for clarity, because silence protects no one, and memory sets us free. If you believe in justice that whispers instead of screams, if you believe that wisdom grows stronger with age, not weaker, if you've ever wanted someone to say, "I see you, I hear you, and you matter," then you belong here. Subscribe to Grandma True Stories, where the quietest woman in the room finally gets to speak, and this time the world listens.